Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Everything You Want to Ask Us, but are afraid to ask session. This is a 1-hour session dedicated to just answering all of your questions. What we're going to do, I'm joined here with a bunch of my talented colleagues. I think I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves. So I'm Julie Powell, and I am product manager for the JavaScript API, and I also cover the design system. Maybe I'll hand it off to Renee.
Yeah, the software dev, JavaScript API, hopefully answer some questions.
And Jan?
Yes, software developer also on the JavaScript API team. Yeah, same as Renee. I will try to answer maximum amount of questions.
And Jeremy?
Hi, Jeremy Bartley, program manager for ArcGIS Online and the JavaScript API. Excited to be here.
Bjorn?
Hi, my name is Bjorn. I'm the lead product engineer for JavaScript API. I try to keep things organized.
And you are very organized. Arno, please.
Hi, I'm Arno Fiva. I'm a developer evangelist for the 3D JavaScript API, working from Zurich together with Javi.
Yep. Hi, I'm Javier Gutierrez. I'm product engineer lead for the 3D aspects of the JavaScript API, also in Zurich.
Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, so here's how this session's going to work. We're going to start by going through the questions that you have put into the ESRI community. We advertised prior to the session that this is the place to put questions, but later on, we were asked to use the live Q&A method that's part of the session. So we're going to start with the ones at ESRI community, but as you enter new questions, please put them into your live Q&A app. So with that said, I also wanted to add a couple of more things. After the conference is over, if you want to put in a question, you can also use the ESRI community. This is the best way to communicate with the development team. We're definitely very active on here, so this is not your only opportunity to ask the team questions. There's a lot of questions already coming in. If we don't get through all of them, after the conference, I will be posting the remaining questions that don't get answered in GeoNet under the ArcGIS API for JavaScript place. So you can go there and reference any of the questions that you were hoping to get answered. Okay, and so with that, we're going to get started. The very first question in ESRI community, we actually need to do a little more research about JSX stability. So please, Anthony, who put this in there, please check back on GeoNet, and I will be posting a response sorry, not GeoNet, ESRI community, getting used to the new name. All right, so UML documentation. Are you planning to release any UML object class documentation like you used to do for ArcObjects? Helps developers to navigate large APIs. We don't plan to put up an object diagram for the API. If you're trying to get familiar with the API, the place that I recommend you going is actually this one. If you go to core concepts, this is a really great place to kind of understand the architecture of the API, understand how things are put together. There's a lot of other great conceptual documentation that outlines the big pieces of the API. There's also the programming patterns and fundamentals session that Renee presented. That's another great one to attend. And then also tutorials are also really good. So these are just some of the resources you have available to learn about the API. Okay, next question. Plain vanilla JavaScript versus frameworks and libraries. With so many tools available out there for building a JavaScript application, how would you decide what's necessary, especially helpful, versus something that is unnecessary overhead, like a performance hit, file cache, long-term maintenance upgrades? So Renee, do you want to address this question?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, so I mean, we don't necessarily have a recommendation on the framework that you should be using. Our recommendations typically fall in what you're more comfortable with, and maybe team size and team preference, because something like React, for example, is a very flexible UI tool, but it's not necessarily a framework. So there's a lot of different options you have in terms of state management, testing, and so on that you would want to take into consideration for using. However, if you're working with a team of more than a handful of people, then you might want to consider frameworks like either Angular, Ember, or Modern Dojo, which are really full-fledged frameworks, and they come with a suite of tools for doing everything from building components to routing to state management to testing and everything in between. So they really have a fleshed out way to do all of that stuff. So the team itself doesn't have a strong preference one way or the other. It's really more of what you're more comfortable with and what maybe a team preference would be. A lot of solo developers will just use React because it's very popular. There's a large community for it. But like I said, it probably is going to require a bit more homework and picking up and deciding what it is you want to do with it in that case. So that's how I would answer that.
And this year we have a session dedicated to working with React, another one with TypeScript, another one with Angular. So you can watch those. And then also in the past, there's recordings available from previous Dev Summits where Renee did a session kind of exploring a variety of frameworks. So that also might be an opportunity to kind of think about which framework, if you need one, and what one might be of interest to you. Okay, next question. How long will ArcGIS API for JavaScript CDN, how long will it be available? There's a lot of questions coming in about this, specifically about the 3x API. And there's questions about the relationship with Web App Builder. So I'm going to just address all of those right now, all of the 3x related questions. So we will have the 3x API hosted on the CDN. We have no plans to remove it, although the 3x API does have a product lifecycle. If you'd like to see the details of that, you can go to the tech support website. The individual 3x versions are listed and what their retirement dates are. But at a high level, new apps should use the 4x API. That's where we're putting all of our development. 3x is really limited to very, very minor updates related to critical bug fixes. And I think the last release maybe had 2 bug fixes and a locale added. So it really is kind of can be considered in maintenance mode at this point. Our original retirement date was August, I believe, 1st, 2022. And we are going to have to extend it slightly based on Web App Builder. And that's because the Web App Builder team that also works on Experience Builder is still working on fleshing out a lot of the capabilities. And so until we have more usage on Experience Builder, we will continue to release Web App Builder. The plan for 3x is essentially 2 years past the last Web App Builder release, we will be supporting 3x. Now, what support means is that if you can call tech support if you're having an issue, you need to, you have a question. But if you find a bug, there is it'd be difficult to have that fixed because of our development focus is on the 4x API. So that should really be taken into account when you're deciding to work on new apps. But if you already have a 3x app in production, there's no need to be concerned. You can continue to have that app in production. And we want your app to continue working with, and we want to support that path forward if that's what you need to do. So I think that kind of summarizes where we are with 3x, and hopefully you're coming up to speed during the conference on 4x and for your new applications. Okay, so next question. How do you pass the scene view from one TSX to another TSX component in the React environment? Renee, are you going to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can. So what I can do is I can actually put a link up. I'll respond to this GeoNet question with how this would work. Basically, the idea here is that it's more of a typing issue. In this particular case, the way the snippet is written. What you want to do is when you use hooks in React and you're going to use this use ref like this, you need to type the user ref to what you expect the type to be. And what we expect in the API in our typings is a container to be an HTML div element. So if you type user ref to be HTML div element, then this particular code snippet here would work, which is what I think the user is trying to do. So I'll respond back in that GeoNet post with the how that would look like and stuff. So that's how it would work.
Great, thanks, Renee. Okay, so I think that is all the questions that we had on here. So we'll move over to the live app and start answering questions there. Okay. If I can find where. Okay, so first question is for me. Oh, I already answered it. It's about 3x. So I'm looking into different front end frameworks. Oh, I think this one we already answered as well about using frameworks that Renee answered. Again, if you want to explore the different frameworks, there are some really great sessions, not just from this developer summit, but for past developer summits. I'm going to stop sharing so we can just do the camera now. Is it possible to plot sizable pie charts as graphic symbols over point locations using the feature attributes as input data? Jan, do you want to answer that one?
I think Jeremy can answer it.
Okay, Jeremy. The ball's tossed to Jeremy.
I mean, yeah, with with the definitely do that. It's a little tricky because you can't have that many pie charts, and if symbols start to overlap, they become hard to read. But we have seen a lot of people create pie charts with like a charting library, get the image out and place it on the map as like a picture marker symbol. If you've seen the COVID Pulse app that John Nelson and Jinan Zhang put together with Jan and others helped, they have a sparkline map of COVID rates, and that's pulling the data down as pulling the data down and then creating custom sim marker symbols where the line is actually the trend line, and then placing that on the map as a custom symbol. So there's options for you, but it's not going, if you have a lot of features, you're going to run into overlaps and might be hard to read. I don't know, Jan, if you wanted to add anything else.
No, I will post a link to the COVID Pulse app and also to the, I think it's also on GitHub. So
I think anytime we're posting links in previous sessions, some people have found it hard to find the link. So for those questions, I'll add those to GeoNet as well, so you can reference the links there too. Oh, gosh, I keep saying GeoNet. It's called ESRI Community now. Okay, next question. Now we need API keys to use location services, but if people visualize our code, they can use our API keys. How can we prevent this? I know Jeremy or Bjorn could answer this. Jeremy, do you want to take it?
Sure. So yeah, an API key you lock to a particular origin or refer location. So from a browser-based application, that API key can only be used from wherever you decide to lock it, if you do lock it down to a particular URL. But yeah, anybody else can, if they can view the app, they can see the key and they can take the key. They won't be able to use it in a web application, but they could use it in a Python application where they can put the correct referrer in the header when they make the request. So you're correct. It's not a way to, it's not a 100% secure solution. And if you really want something like that, you really need to have people sign in through OAuth, and then only they can see that. And then they won't have access to any of the services, or they won't be able to use any of the tokens that are with them on other applications, because they only live for a short while. So it's something, yeah, you got to watch out. It's not a way to secure private data.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Now there's another question. Is there a tool to convert JavaScript code to TypeScript code? We are in the process of rewriting Dojo widget code from WebBuilder in TypeScript. I think Renee's gonna take that and I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, so this is a tool that actually helped me out to convert some of our old JavaScript with require AMD style to modern ES6 imports and everything. It's not 100% and it won't get you all the way there, but it is useful to get you out of that old syntax into a newer syntax. And it's 5 to 6 code mod. And it's basically a code mod you could run on your files that will do that for you. And then once it's done the initial conversion with the import statements, then you have to go through and kind of clean it up a bit. And there's a bit of work there involved. But there isn't like a one-to-one JavaScript to TypeScript conversion tool. But this tool here will get you about, I'd say 75% of the way there in terms of moving over.
Cool. Thanks, Renee. That's helpful. All right. So next question. ESRI is focusing on the performance for getting the data on the map as quickly as possible. Loading the API is still slower compared to the competitors, even building the app with tree shaking. The ArcGIS API for JavaScript supports more functionalities than the competitors. Is loading the API a focus point? Jeremy, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I could start, and then Jan, if you want to add anything, go ahead. Definitely, we're looking at the build sizes and coming up with different strategies for making that even smaller. We do a lot of testing around time to map visual, time to when the map is available so somebody can see it. And in a lot of cases, we perform better than our competitors for heavy vector tile layers, GeoJSON layers. And of course, we're sort of unique with the feature service. So it's definitely, we look at it holistically and we're constantly trying to improve that. I don't know, Jan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so we have a lot of code in the API that is built around classes and it's about tree shaking. And those classes, they may, for example, you may use the geometry service class, but then from the 16 methods, you may just use the project one. And tree shaking doesn't remove those extra functions, so it doesn't work on classes like geometry service. So what we are working on is, for example, for the task, is to move them to a more functional pattern. So export modules with the 16 functions instead of exporting a class with 16 methods. And then that will work much better for tree shaking. We will keep the old classes, but then we will just, deprecate them over multiple releases. So that will improve tree shaking. But also you noted in your question that we have more functionalities. And yes, for sure, we are going to be always be a little bit more heavier. But we do load also a lot of code at runtime. So when you use ES modules and you build your application, automatically the build tool that you use, Rollup or whatnot, it will see that we are importing code at runtime and it will create automatically those bundles. So you may have many bundles on disk in your built application, but then not everything is loaded when you start your application. Only what you use is loaded. So for sure, we will explore more tree shaking. We are just able to use it now because we have ES modules, which tree shaking wasn't possible with AMD. So, yeah, we will explore more to reduce the size, but we will never be as small as an API that doesn't have so many features.
Thanks, Jan. There's a question that someone asked that wanted to clarify my answer to the 3x roadmap. And it said, Julie, when you said that the initial 3x end date had to be pushed forward due to WebBuilder updates, did you mean that WebBuilder is being completely migrated to 4x? So are you really keeping WebBuilder in parallel to Experience Builder? No, I'm sorry, I did not mean that. the reality, just similar to where we were with 3x and 4x migration, was, you know, there's a lot of work to be done in 4x so that we could reach parity at a place where developers were ready to use 4x, and there was this in between time frame. And that's something similar that's going on with Web App Builder. There's more work that needs to be done in the Experience Builder until we have more developers using that as an alternative. And within that time frame, people still need to use Web App Builder when they really want to use like a builder approach for building apps. By the way, you know, you can also use the web app templates for that scenario. There's many different options that people can use to build their web apps for the low code, you know, no code configurable case. But until we have more developers ready to use Experience Builder, we have to, you know, have Web App Builder on an API that is still supported. So for that reason, we're keeping it in a kind of a mature support phase until the end of the Web App Builder support timeframe. So we don't plan to, as far as I know, plan to rewrite Web App Builder in 4x. The solution going forward is really Experience Builder combined with web application templates, combined with custom maps. There's many alternatives. So that's the path going forward. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so let's go to another question. We can feature layer view.highlight, but there's no get highlights, meaning that if you don't have the handle because some other component has done the highlighting, there's no way to get the selected features. It's a thing that I constantly need. Am I missing something? Jan, do you want to talk about highlight?
Yeah, I think Nick already asked this question yesterday, but I'm glad you're answering it again. Yeah, we don't have a way to get the highlighted features. You only have highlights, so you need to maintain that into the application. It can be interesting to get the reference to the highlighted features, the highlighted IDs. So yeah, this is something that we will consider.
Cool. Are pop-ups and feature layers a strict one-to-one relationship? Can I display data from more than one feature layer in a single pop-up template? Jeremy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, they are they are tied to an individual layer, and so you get the data for that whatever feature the user clicked on. With Arcade and pop-ups, you can use the feature set capabilities of Arcade to pull in data from other services and layers, and then present that data however you wish. So you'll see people do that a lot. Like there's examples that have been shared at different conferences before of like pulling in data from the Living Atlas, even though the Living Atlas layer is not used in the map. It uses the feature set capabilities of Arcade to query that and pull in like some demographic data, let's say. So that's definitely an option.
Does the NPM version have all the same functionality as the normal API? I can answer that one, Jan. I think we were going to have you, but I know this one. So both the NPM and the AMD, which I think you're calling normal version, are both built from the same source. So they have the same functionality. I think that's an easy one. Jan, do you have any additions to that?
Oh, we have it's that we have a script that generates both the AMD CDN build, the CDN ESM build, the NPM AMD build, and the NPM ESM builds. So everything comes from the same TypeScript source code, and then gets built multiple times and packaged and so on.
Okay. Could you briefly talk about how ESRI tests new JavaScript API feature releases mostly on E2E and integration tests? Javi, you want to take that?
Sure, I can try to cover that. So I'll just go through the overview of how we test. We have two kinds of tests, obviously, the automated test and manual test. For automated tests, there's 4 types. We write a lot of unit tests. I guess we have thousands of them by now, which touch very specific pieces of code. We have integration tests that run the WebGL view in the browser and render the view. And we have screenshot tests that compare an existing rendering, well-known render against the new render after the code has changed, and notifies us when there's differences, and that becomes a problem. And we also run performance tests that are graphed over time to detect problems on performance regressions, for example, higher memory usage or higher load times, etc. These are executed on every commit and on every merge into the main branch. And then manual testing happens as well for every feature that we develop or for every bug that we fix. There's a manual verification process, creating a small snippet or reproducing the bug with the original repro case. So there's a couple of options there. And eventually, closer to the release dates, manual testing times are increased. And we use for example, the whole team gathers together to run smoke or exploratory testing before release a few times. And we also outsource some manual test cases covering all browsers and devices through applications, for example, like SceneViewer and MapViewer. And this differs a bit from Zurich to Redlands, but that's in a nutshell the strategy.
Thanks, Javi. Okay, here's a question that I've definitely heard before. Dojo is supposed to be removed from the API, but we look at the API and developer tools, we see Dojo items. Why? Jan, you want to take that?
Yeah, so yeah, sorry about that confusion. So we are still, like I said, the API is built as multiple targets. One of them is the AMD build that is on the CDN. We are still using the Dojo build tool to build that version of the API, because the Dojo build tool plus the Clojure compiler has the best AMD output. We tested the different other tooling tools like Rollup and so on, and we can't get the same size. Dojo has this feature where you can define the build layers, which is unique to the Dojo build tool, and so far we don't have a good replacement for it. So the Dojo loader is still if you are using the AMD build, you are still using the Dojo loader. But yeah, that's it. The rest, the code base of the API doesn't have any Dojo anymore.
Jan, do you want to also talk about why we've removed it?
So we had to remove Dojo because Dojo is built in AMD, and also Dojo has a lot of AMD loader plugins, it's called, and because of them, we couldn't build ES modules. We wanted to have ES modules. The goal is that it's to make it easier for developers to bring the API into any framework, any build tools they are using. Previously in the past, everyone was like, okay, I can make the API work in X framework or X build tool, and how do I do it? And you had to use a lot of workarounds, and it's very annoying because before starting to use the API and discovering the good features that we are working on, you have to figure out how to integrate the API into the application. So it's a major roadblock when getting started. So we wanted ES modules to fix that, not having this problem anymore. And so for that, yeah, we had to remove Dojo. So we took it took 2 years. We had to replace the way we localize widgets, the way we use promises. Instead of using Dojo deferred, we use native promises. And these were big changes that the entire team contributed to. So, yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Is ESRI planning to add TypeScript support for properties that are auto-casted from, let's say, JSON or object definitions without needing to cast as any? Or is that even possible? Another one for you, Jan?
Yeah, so it's a limitation of the TypeScript language. TypeScript, you can't define that a property is both the typed object and the properties or the JSON object, like you said. They are adding in TypeScript 4.3, they are adding that capability. So we'll have to see if we can adapt the typings so that it can work. But yeah, it works in JavaScript. It works in the end, but it's just like in TypeScript, it's not possible to express it so far.
Okay. I think this one's for Jeremy. During the Road Ahead session this morning, we saw a bunch of new enhancements to the forms and the 2D editing capabilities. Do regular feature layers on the client support the forms you showed, or must it be using a hosted feature service to do this? Jeremy, do you want me to show it? Or go ahead and then.
No, yeah, we don't need to show anything. Yeah, that works with any feature service or any feature layer from any source. It's actually part of the web map spec, so it's something that's configured there. So,
but there's also, I mean, some of the stuff that he showed, is pretty cool in terms of like making a really great experience for forms-based editing. And even though it's not necessarily coming through the web map in your JavaScript code, you can also
you can also do it in JavaScript.
Really great, editing experience, based on what your users need to do. Yeah, and we have some samples demonstrating that.
Exactly.
Okay. What is new with Calcite? Do Calcite components replace Calcite web? I can take that one. Yes, Calcite, our Calcite design system, is replacing Calcite web. Calcite web was like our original project starting several years ago. And now Calcite components are the actual web components that's part of the overall design system. My recommendation is on April 22nd, go to the developer website and search for Calcite. And you'll see all of the Calcite resources fully integrated into developer site. So you'll get the colors and typeface and recommendations and all of the documentation for using the web components, including the knobs you can turn to like see how they are configured, get to the code. And then from the developer website, it'll link out to different GitHub repos where you actually can get access to the source code, or you can get any level of detail that you'd like. So that is definitely the replacement and the active project going forward. Calcite web is going to be deprecated, and Calcite components is the path forward in terms of the web components. There's 2 sessions, by the way, today that cover working with Calcite, and they're going to be, I think they're going to be really great sessions. One's dedicated to everything you might want to know about the components and building applications with them. And then the other one is more focused for designers, like how to use the Sketch and a UI kit to design your app and then hand that over to a development team that's, could then actually build the app. So both of those sessions are after this session. Okay. Why aren't there more presentations and tutorials for Vue.js? I know that we have samples for integrating ESM with Vue.js on GitHub, but Rene, do you want to talk a little bit about Vue and what work we've done there?
Yes, so that's mainly, we just haven't had a lot of requests for it up to this point. We always get a lot of requests for things like React and Angular, having the 2 most popular ones to do requests for. We used to have a session that was like an overall framework session that we actually covered React, Vue, Angular, and Ember all in one session, but we weren't really able to dedicate enough time to each one. I think they're really kind of general overviews. But if there's enough interest for it, we can definitely introduce a dedicated Vue session for the next Dev Summit. The API right now, depending on how you use it in Vue, with Vue 3 specifically, the way they use JavaScript proxies in Vue 3 can break with our API, the way that we have our accessors and classes built right now, but we actually do have an issue currently in place to try and see if we can fix that in the future. But it works fine with Vue 2 at the moment, doing stuff. And like Julie said, there's a handful of samples out there using the Vue CLI with the ES modules package of the JavaScript API to build apps. So I'll see if we can find a couple of those and we can link them somewhere when Julie puts this stuff together.
Yeah, and I also responded directly to that question just with the one repo for working with ESM. But yeah, we'll also put that on ESRI Community. Okay. Is there a timeline for improving the feature table widget and moving it out of beta? It's very useful for some of my apps, but it's missing some pretty basic functionality, and it wasn't mentioned in the Road Ahead session. I definitely have a request that if there are specific things you're looking for, definitely let us know. You can, maybe I'll even put this in the ESRI Community site, and then you can add more specifics to what you're looking for. But Jeremy, do you want to answer this question?
I want to answer it.
Oh, go for it, Bjorn.
I mean, basically, the feature table itself is out of beta from a few versions ago, so that part isn't true anymore. There are some known limitations, and I think that's where getting more feedback on what exactly features, like Julie was mentioning, would be crucial. Thank you.
To follow, I guess there's another question in there, Julie. Well, we have a grid widget, and that was basically the feature table is your grid widget for displaying that tabular view.
I see. Okay. Okay. Any plans to extend Symbol Builder for polygon and line symbols? Bjorn, do you want that one?
No, because I don't know the answer.
Maybe
Somebody else.
I think so, right? We would want to do that eventually, since we have line support. So if you find that symbol builder useful, then yeah, that's something we can look at. It starts to get quite a bit more complicated when you start dealing with lines and polygons with Sim. So yeah, we'll have to see.
It's cool that you're using that symbol builder though, because I also really like it. Okay, is it possible to have two map views in a web app? Would this introduce performance issues? Definitely no, you can have more than one map view in a web app because of the separation between the map and the actual presentation of it. But Jan, do you want to speak to performance consideration?
Yeah. I can show some examples as well.
Oh yeah.
I will share my screen here. Yeah, so in the SDK, you can find a sample that shows a map with multiple map views. If you type create an app with composite views, and it's an application that shows the same map but represented with 3 map views. So like that, you can show the different parts of the United States, for example. Actually, yesterday, there was a blog post about the Living Atlas, what's new in the Living Atlas on the ArcGIS blog. And if you check out the article, there is a link to this application that shows an application with 6 map views showing different data, and then like a time slider applied to each one of them. So definitely it is going to have an impact on performance in the sense that each map view needs to download the data to display. So each of these map views, they have downloaded the same base map images and the same and the features that they are displaying. So yeah, the more you are using, the more it's gonna use performance of your web browser. There is a limit in the number of map views you can display into one web page because we are using WebGL. There is a limit in the number of WebGL instances you can have in your web page, and we don't have a hand on this. It depends of the web browser. On desktop, on Chrome, I think it's 16. So if you have like more than 16 map views, then the next one will destroy the previous one. And that's it.
Okay.
One more thing to add on that, if you guys watched Christian's demo in the plenary on Tuesday, he showed his national park app had multiple views, and I believe he'll be doing a blog post, or he's already done a blog post on that. I think, no, he's going to do an updated blog post on in the near term. Okay.
So another question, any idea when support for dashed lines and feature layers will be supported in scene view? Arno, you want to take that one?
I can take that one, yeah, sure. That's actually on the roadmap for later this year. So for one of the upcoming releases. Should probably mention at this point, so that's dashed lines for line geometries, but also outlines for polygons in scene views. So that should both work. And it's part of a larger topic for patterns, line and polygon patterns. So we already released polygon patterns last year in October for 4.17, I think. So we already have that working in the API.
Great. Another one for you, Arno. What is the best way to create a 3D bar chart in a scene view to display the comparison of two values for each geometry, 2 bars for each feature?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I struggled with that one in the past for example, for point features where you have different values. Something I used to work around that is basically having two types of different views. So maybe 2 slides or a toggle somewhere where you can really either show these values or those values for that geometry. Something you could also try, it sometimes works, is if you, for example, have point symbologies, you could visualize them with some 3D object symbol, and for example, stack them on top of each other. You could do that with an elevation offset using that variable and size variables to kind of indicate what the value is, or also color variables. And yeah, just kind of show them on top of each other. I hope that helps. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what kind of data that is.
Thanks, Arno. And if anybody wants to add to that or add something specific, you can definitely do that on the ESRI community as well. And we can follow up. So let's see, I have extensive use in ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro, and I know how to program Python, but I've never done any JavaScript web development before. Do you have any recommendations on the best way to learn JavaScript specifically for using the ArcGIS API for JavaScript? I did show the core concepts and tutorials that are really great for getting started in the SDK site. And there's also a session during, it's actually on demand that you can watch that's getting started for web development and the JavaScript API. So that's a really great way to get started. And Renee, do you want to add anything in terms of the resources that you've worked on that might be helpful?
So we have a handful of blog posts that are really good too on the ESRI blog that go over, especially working with like ESM and a couple of frameworks and stuff that are really good. The GitHub repos that we have on the ESRI org for especially the JS API resources is a really good resource because they include code samples for working with TypeScript. There's a very simple TypeScript demo in there to get started, as well as demos for working with Webpack with the AMD build, as well as various build tools and frameworks for working with the ES modules build. We put a lot of work into those particular samples. So that's really a good place to get started too. If you're just getting started with JavaScript, the Mozilla Developer Network documentation actually has some pretty good resources in terms of like things you can follow there. Not just the doc itself, but actually like resources and to learn how to use JavaScript and do stuff like that, which is really good. So I would look at that too.
Cool, thanks, Renee. There was a follow-up question about Calcite Web and Calcite Components that I can quickly answer. The Calcite Web and some of the other repos had an Apache 2 open source license, and the Calcite Components is licensed under ESRI MLA. I think people are just trying to understand the difference in licensing. In both cases, we're sharing the source code. So even with going forward, when we do the official release on April 22nd, you'll still be able to access the source code. The difference is that we are requiring just that you have a developer account. You can still put your apps into production using that developer account. And what we're going to do is basically publish, any other, licensing details directly in the SDK site. But it should be just as easy for you to create apps with Calcite and put your applications in production. And you can still access the code, as I mentioned. Okay, so let's see. Is there any issues using 419 and 420, which doesn't exist yet, but will soon, with 10.7 of enterprise? I'm not aware of any issues working with 10.7 in enterprise. I don't know, Jeremy, if you are aware of any issues.
No, yeah, you shouldn't have any issues. I will say though, you'll get better performance by using 10.9 or I guess at a minimum 10.8.1 for map services, because the API will request the data in protocol buffer format. And that's going to really reduce the amount of time it takes to bring down large data sets. But no, the API works with older versions as well.
I can add to that too. Basically, we do support all versions of enterprise, so it doesn't really matter if you have an older version. But like Jeremy pointed out, it might be slower.
Okay, cool. Are you aware of a recent issue with JavaScript API 3.30 and below in Chrome? Uninstalling, reinstalling Chrome, or updating to 3.3.1 resolved the issue. The issue was with map clicks not being recognized. Bjorn, you want that one?
Yes. So the short answer is yes, we are aware of the issue. It's a problem with the latest versions of Chrome. It doesn't affect all users, it seems like right now, but it does affect some or most. And the problem is related to 3.30 and before that. We made changes to our pointer and mouse events in 3.31, and that's why the more recent versions work just fine. There are some issues in the Chromium tracking that we're trying to follow up and figure out exactly whether it's a Chromium issue or something that we need to fix on our side. But it's something we're actively investigating.
Cool, thank you, Bjorn. Okay, here's a good one. Is there a way to prevent public users from editing a feature service? Absolutely, there is. Jeremy, you want to talk about it?
Yep, definitely do not make your feature service editable unless you want people to edit it. It's a performance going to be a performance limitation because when editing is enabled, the JavaScript API is going to request the full detailed geometry. And the other main point is actually more important. You're putting yourself out there, and you could have nefarious people editing your data when you don't want them to be. So definitely be very deliberate about when you make your feature service editable and public, and only do that if you're trying to build like a crowdsourced solution. It's definitely the way to go. And if you are using ArcGIS Online and you have a map with a layer that's editable and it goes viral, like it gets picked up on CNN or whatever, and you get a lot of load, you'll have somebody from ESRI contacting you to tell you to change your workflow. And with feature service views in both online and enterprise, that makes it much easier because you can have a view that is public and doesn't have any editing capabilities. But you can have another view or the source be editable and shared to the group of editors you want. And they're both pulling from the same data table. So your public users who are viewing will see the correct content, but they won't be making any edits to your data. So it's definitely something to watch out for.
And of course, I guess the obvious is that you can secure them and require people to sign in based on your, how you configure your security and sharing of feature service. And we assume that you're talking about ArcGIS Online hosted, but of course there's other security mechanisms for enterprise and for ArcGIS Server as well. So you definitely have full control over that. Will the JavaScript API support Geo Package, Jeremy?
No, no plans to support that. It's a MySQL, so that's not really something that can be done easily in the browser. So no.
How can you post, share custom JavaScript API apps directly in ArcGIS Online? I know that question came up a long time ago when people were building apps with WebBuilder. They wanted to share their custom ones. We didn't have a mechanism. Have you heard about any talk about that, Jeremy, about any custom apps being hosted in online?
No, there'll be no hosting of custom apps in online. You can use online to have a link to your app, but online is not the place to host your custom applications. And that's purely from a security standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The Web App Builder team is doing some trials with some business partners in the marketplace about supporting custom widgets for Web App Builder that are hosted and can be purchased from the marketplace and then integrated into the app. But that's a trial, I would say, and it's going through see how that goes. But that does require a security step and review that the ESRI security team does. So
it's pretty involved. It seems like that process. So
yeah, it's not. So I think there's no chance in the future, no chance in the coming months or years that we'll be supporting hosting custom apps. Lots of other solutions for that. So we push it that way.
Is it will it be possible to run 3x and 4x side by side in an effort to migrate 4x? Absolutely, you can create an app in 3x and a separate app in 4x. We don't recommend that you use 3x and 4x in the same application. You really should just start from scratch when you're building a 4x application. I don't know if Jan or anybody wants to add, any additional insights to that in terms of migration.
I could add a little bit to that. And if you're using the CDN and you want to use both 3x and 4x in the same app, I think we've demoed it before. It is possible, but I think you lose some performance when you do it that way. So we don't really recommend it, like Julie said, but you could do it for a small migration, but it's not the best idea to do.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about like the fundamental architecture with 4x being distinct, and really it's a good idea to kind of take a fresh look at your app and thinking about what you want it to do, and then kind of designing it is obviously the cleanest approach. I know that's not always practical, but it's definitely should be a consideration. Okay, how do I symbolize data using related tables for one-to-many cardinality? For example, I have two tables linked by an object ID. One table is a multi-patch feature set, and one record the change of their land uses over time based on years. My map is time-enabled, and I want to show changes in land use over time. Sounds like a word problem. Jan, do you want to take that one? It's a puzzle.
No.
I need to reread it.
Yeah. Which one is it? Sorry.
Okay, I want to symbolize data using related tables for one-to-many cardinality. For example, I have two tables linked by one object ID. One table is a multi-patch feature set, and one record the change of their land uses. One record the change of their land uses over time. My map is time-enabled, and I want to show changes in land use over time. So I guess the question is about symbolization for related tables for one-to-many. Not really sure.
Yeah, we don't.
I'm gonna. This person is marked. You didn't put your name, but I would request that you post this question on the ESRI community for the JavaScript API, and then we can have a discussion about it to make sure we understand what you're trying to do. Okay, next question.
Yeah, so what I would, the problem is like, if you change the two tables, it's going to be more complicated, but we have very good performance with feature layer. If you have feature layers with a lot of attributes, a lot of columns. So if you could do a join of the polygon features with the attribute table, if you can do that join with all the attributes, then after you can use the attributes over time by changing the renderer, and it's very performant. I think, do you have demos to share, Jeremy? I don't remember.
Well, I was just, you read my mind, Jan. I was just going to do that.
So if you manage, it's just like we don't have the way on the JavaScript API to do joint, but if you can do it up front, you can get very good performance to show data changing over time by switching the value that you are visualizing, the attribute table, the attribute that you are visualizing.
Can you see, I see my screen?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is doing this OneOcean app that Christian built for last year's Dev Summit is doing just that. So that data basically came for each location, for each variable. There's 200 depth values, and we pivoted that table to create this really big fat table where we have just one spatial location, but we have a lot of attributes, like 600 or 700 different attributes for this app. And you see how fast it is to render on different attributes. Every time I click this slider, it's basically changing the arcade expression and picking new fields to render based on that. So the API is designed really well to work with this app. And this app and performance is greatly improved over the last year. Should say that the source data is like 600 megabytes, and now we've got it down to a very tiny, size in terms of bringing it to the browser, and performance is really great. So yeah, this is definitely something to try.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. Actually, if you want to keep sharing your screen, I don't know if you want to show example, but there's.
I also had that ready.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Jeremy, is it possible to use attribute values of the feature in your sim symbol?
Yeah. Can you see this screen, Julie?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. So this example, this is showing an app of worm and dots, and if you could tell, it's actually two circles. There's an outer circle and an inner circle in this app, and these are changing based on sizes, based on scale. But this is inspired after Saul Merman's atlas that came out in the 60s, followed this methodology. And so we're using Sim with two symbol layers, both an inner circle and an outer circle. And Sim has the notion of primitive overrides, and it can be with an arcade expression. So we're using arcade to update the size of that inner circle based on these attribute values. In this case, it's like %forest. So you can basically target any aspect of your Sim definition through the primitive overrides. It's different from a visual variable. So a visual variable, you're tying data to a particular size. In this case, you're actually just returning the size you want. So it wants the size, or it wants the color exactly as it's expecting it. So that's what this expression here does. And this is a sample in the SDK. You just check out.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, we've got 2 minutes, and I'm going to try and get through 3 questions. So we'll make it fast. Any info about ArcGIS JS CLI? Is it still in active development? Renee?
Yes, it's still active development. However, we're looking at what we might make some changes where instead of using the CLI to template an application, we might actually have repos that are the templates. And there's ways you can use NPM to actually pull templates in and use them for your projects. The CLI going forward will probably still be used for Experience Builder widgets and custom widgets for the JavaScript API, because it works very well in those 2 use cases. So stay tuned there. We'll talk more about that after 4.19 is released leading up to 4.20.
Thanks, Renee. And it sounds like you kind of answered the next question. When will the next JavaScript API be out, and what is the version? It is 4.19 and it's scheduled for April 22nd. If you're interested, I'm going to post a link where you can even try it out now using our early access next repo. Okay, next question. How could I get to use the JavaScript API geometry engine in Node? Renee, you've got 1 minute for that question.
Okay, so there's actually a sample on GitHub under the JS API resources in that ESM samples folder on how to use the API in Node. Geometry engine should work there. Last time I tried it, I believe it did. Everything else, well, things like projection engine and stuff work. Things that will not work in a Node environment are going to be anything that is browser-based dependence, like map view. That's not going to work. But all the queries, geometry engine and tasks and things like that, those should all work in that case. So check out those samples to get a good idea how to do it.
Cool. Thank
Hey,
you.
one more. Where did you get that cool poster?
I got that at the Half Stack conference last year. That was a gift from these people that threw the conference, and it's an awesome poster. That's why it's up right there on camera.
Love it.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining. And like I said, there's a ton of questions and we want to get to all of them. So we will be following up on the ESRI community. So keep your lookout. Thank you very much. Have a good conference.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
All right.